Alright, so today I'm going to be going over how I created this game and how you can create a similar game. So first of all, we're going to be going over the base mechanics just with logic bricks and how I got all of this to work. This is just with logic bricks. A few things I did a little bit of code for, but that's just mainly like putting the score onto the third screen. But I'm just going to be talking about the base mechanics and how we can do that. And in the second one, I'm going to be going over how we can create some of this graphical stuff if you really wanted to create kind of this kind of style with this ambient occlusion baked in. So we're going to go ahead and learn how to do this. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and set up the base mechanics of our game. So we're going to go ahead and grab the camera and we're going to go Alt R and Alt G. What it's going to go ahead and do is it's going to clear the rotation and location. And we can go ahead and move this camera up. So we just need to go G, Z, and then move our mouse up. And you'll see we have the camera up the top here. Now, one thing to note is when we are working in Blender for Game Engine, we have to switch it from the normal Blender mode to the real-time Game Engine mode. And if you don't know how to do that, the way we do that is up here you'll see this Blender render, or in some cases it will be cycles. So what we're going to go ahead and do is just click Blender Game. And what it's going to go ahead and do is it's going to switch it to Game Engine settings. And as you can see, all these settings over here changed, but we should be able to leave these for now. Alright. So let's go ahead and go into camera view and let's go see. So it's in the right position. Let's go G, Z, and move this up. So I'm just moving the mouse across the screen. Alright, so that's a distance I like. And then I'm going to go S, Y, and scale it up holding control. So it's about the size of a normal cube. As you can see, if I get a normal cube, it's about double the size of a normal cube. Alright, so I'm going to go Control A, apply scale, and this is going to fix up any problems we'll have with scaling. So let's go ahead and set up the physics. So this, we're going to come over here. I'm just using the middle click if you want to be able to move this. And I'm going to go ahead and click on this physics. And I'm going to change this physics type from static to dynamic. Now, if we press play now, what you'll see is the cube starts falling. And that's not necessarily what we want. What we want to go ahead and do is have the cube fall. Sorry, not the cube to fall. The cube to stay in the same place, and the level is going to be passing the cube. Alright. So I'm actually going to move this camera down because I want to have it as close as possible. You might want to go ahead and change your field of view to something else. It's up to you. The reason I'm doing this is if we have it really far away, then we have to change the mist to annoying settings when we set it up. Alright, so everything should be set up, but one thing we want to do is you'll see that problem before when we press play, it's falling down, which we don't want because we want it to stay in the same place. So the way we can fix that is we can go ahead and see, you'll see down here, when you're using a dynamic object, you'll see lock translation. And what I'm going to go ahead and do is just lock all of these. Now, one thing to note is when we use scripts or logic bricks to actually move this object, this is not going to prevent that. It's just going to prevent it from being moved if it gets bumped or something. So as you can see, it's staying in the same place, but it can still detect collisions and all that kind of stuff, which is what we want. So let's go ahead and also go and enable collision bounds down here. And this is going to give it a collision box around the size of our box, which you'll be able to see. It's a bit hard to see, but around here, as you can see these dotted lines, that's the box right there. We have a few different ones. We have this one here, capsule, the box we had before. We have all these different ones, cone, but box should work fine for what we're doing, and it will just kind of scale to the size of the box usually. Alright, so now that is set up, let's go ahead and set up the logic for this. So let's go ahead and change this from default to game logic. Now when you do that, you'll see we have our scene right here, and you're going to go into camera view. Alright, so now we're in camera view. So let's go ahead and set up the logic for this. So the way we're going to go ahead and set up the logic for this is we're going to add a sensor. So if we go ahead and add sensor keyboard, what this is going to allow us to do is we can put a key in. So let's say W. Right, so W for when we move forward or up. And then we can say go ahead and add a actuator here. So what's happening here is the W key, when we activate that, what this is going ahead and do is it's sending a signal to this, and it's saying this is an AND. And what this allows us to do is you can say if W and S were connected up, they both have to be used. There's a lot of different ones you can add here. This is kind of asking things, so we've got OR and then these other kind of ones which we can get into later one day. But for now, all you need is the AND or the OR sensor, because the OR is just basically, if we were to change this to an OR type, it won't care if we press W or S. But in this case, if we just have one, it doesn't matter. So we can leave this on OR or AND. I'm going to leave it on AND. So now if we go click W, it's going to send a pulse through here, and as long as we're holding this, it's going to move it in a certain direction. In my case, I want it to move up, well, not necessarily in a three-dimensional up, just from where my camera's pointing. So in that case, it's Y. So let's go 0.1 on the Y-axis, and now you can see that it's moving. One thing to note is that this local does mean if you have this rotated, it will move up in that direction. So that's one thing to note. If you have it rotated or something, you could just leave it like this if you like, and it's going to move up straight up. So one thing to note, I did not go over before, and some people might have been wondering how to do it. If you want to start your game, you can just come up here and use game, start game, or you can go ahead and come here to embedded player and start. Also, there is a standalone one, so if we press that, it's going to open up a window here, and it's going to play a standalone one right there. But this has a few more extra options if you want them. Anyway, let's go ahead and call this W so we know what it's used for, and we just want to go ahead and do this 3 more times. So for every direction, so you could click on this if you want, and you could use arrow keys as well. In my case, I am using W, A, S, and D, so we want to use all of those. So W, A, S, and D, A, and D. Let's go A. Let's select this one, D. And let's go ahead and add a motion, and a motion. So we want 3 motion actuators. And we want to go ahead and click on this. So you have 2 little arrows here, or you can type the number in. I prefer to type the number in, but you can do that. So I'm going to go minus 0.1. So now that we have that, what you see is we should be able to move forward and backwards, so that works. So let's go ahead and plug A in, and this is going to be coming out this way. So when we click A, it's going to go in this direction. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to find it. So down here you can see the direction, so it's X, so we can say X, and it's the wrong direction, so we're going to go X minus 0.1. And now you see we can move up sideways. We just need the other direction. So let's go ahead and do that again. With this last one, we're going to move it on the plus X. Connect this up. Connect this up. And we're actually going to call these the names what they are. So A, and this is going to be D. Alright, so now we have gone ahead and done that. We can go ahead and add a always. And what we're doing here is you'll see a problem here. First of all, when we move around, we just kind of go out of screen, and we can keep moving in that direction, which we don't want. We want it to bump into this edge and not be able to move any further. Now you could add like an object around here which it bumps into, but that's a bit complicated. So the way we can go ahead and just make this a lot simpler, and just object will automatically do it, and you don't have to have collision and stuff, is we can go ahead and just add always. This is always going to be constantly running. That's what it always does. So just add sensor always right here. It's always going to be sending out a signal, so it's always going to be running. And we're going to add a constraint, and we want to go ahead and connect this up, and we're going to say it's a location constraint, yes, and we're going to limit the X direction. So how does this work? Well, this number here is going to limit it in the outwards of the X direction. In this case, we've got the X direction. It's going to limit out on the X direction. I believe it's local as well, so if we were to rotate, it's going to limit it along this direction. So what we're going to go ahead and do is it's going to Right, so I'm not explaining this very well, and I already forgot what I was saying before, but basically it's going to limit it depending on how far we give it. So we could say 1 here, 5 here, and we click it and it bumps over there, and you can't move any further, and I'm holding the keys. So how do we know how far we should put this number to? Well, let's say we want it in this grid pattern. Well, you can say, let's see, from the middle of this grid, we have these little boxes, and one of these boxes is equal to one of these. So I believe it's 1 meter, 1 unit, depends on what you set it to. If you have like over here, where is it? If you have it to metric or imperial. But anyway, it doesn't matter what type you have to, it's set to one of these. So what we can go ahead and do is count these out. So we can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And this, I believe this is local from where the object starts. So we can say, oh no, it is local just from world coordinates, I guess. So it was doing something new. So let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we can say it's 8 by -8 because it's going to go to the center. And we want the min to be -8, so to come out here. So it needs to be -8. So now we've done that, what you'll see is you can go all the way to the left and all the way to the right. So now that we've done that, it will stay in the coordinates for this direction. Now one thing to note is a quick thing, if you want it to be a bit kind of smoother when it hits the edge and kind of bounces almost, you can just go ahead and set this dampening to whatever number you want for, works. So as you can see, kind of, it's like you're pushing against it. You can turn it up even more if you want this kind of effect where it's like trying to get through, but you don't. So that's actually quite a cool effect. I'm sure you could use it for something. But anyway, I just kind of wanted to stop exactly when you're there. So let's go ahead and add another constraint. So constraint, and we can connect this into the same always, or same controller that's connected to the always. And we can go ahead and open this up so we can see the settings, and we can say limit the Y, which is up and down for this. And we basically can copy the same settings. So I'm going to go ahead and copy these across. And now what you'll see is we bump into the edge, and in this case I think it's a bit too much because it allows you to go all that way. So I'm going to go ahead and change this to 6. And I'm going to go ahead and change this to -6. So I'm going to go ahead and do this up here as well. Let's go ahead and grab that. And we can say 6 here. So now we have it grid pattern, so we can move around. And the reason for this is the thing you're going to be falling through is going to be square, so I kind of wanted to have it the same dimensions. So there we go. Now we can move around our square and no further, which is really useful. Alright, so let's create our random generation of our level, which we're going to be going through. So the way we can do this is we can come over to our second layer, and we can go ahead and add our part of our level. So this is going to be the first tile. So I can go ahead and name this tile. Hopefully I spelled it right. Tile 1. And now that we've done this, what I'm going to go ahead and do is go into edit mode, and I'm going to select all the vertices with A, X, delete only faces. Now I've done that, I can grab all of them with A and then go E, extrude, and move it down. Alright, so now what you'll see is we have our plane, which has been turned into a kind of just a basic inside of a, I don't know what you call this, maybe inside of a mine or a pipe. That's kind of what I was going for when I was making my level of my game. So there we are. So let's go ahead and scale this down, and this doesn't need to look pretty. We'll do that in another tutorial. So this looks fine for what we need. Alright, so let's go ahead and come back over here to our main scene, and we want to go ahead and add a empty, and there's plenty of types you can have here. The type does not matter, it's just kind of a different way of showing it. I'm going to go sphere so we can easily see what we're doing. Now I can move this down, and I'm going to move it down a few units so it's far enough away that we can add them without the camera noticing. We're going to add mist so you don't see it, the objects just appearing. Sorry about that. Got a bit of a throat problem with my throat. Anyway, what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and add a delay on this, and every 10 ticks I'm going to go ahead and add an object. So the way we do that is use this actuator edit object, and we need to go ahead and connect this up. And we're going to go ahead and select the object from here so we can see tile 1, which we created before. Alternatively, you can just open up the layer and you could use this eyedropper tool and just select that. One thing to note, if you didn't know, the object you're going to add with the edit object, or if you're going to do it in the script, it has to be on a different layer or else it will not add. So make sure that the objects you're going to add into your scene are on a different layer. You can't use them, they're just reference for adding. So now what you'll see is it's adding them, and it should be adding them pretty fast right there. But we need them to move up. So the way we can do that is we can add a always to this tile. So add always. We can close that, and we can add a motion, and we can connect these up. Now, one thing to note is you can have different speeds. So we can say 0.1, and it will move up pretty slow. We can have 1, and we can have all different kind of values. So I'm going to try something different this time. In my game, I just had it set to 1. You can have it 1, but I think 0.6 is a bit nicer of a speed. Alright, so let's go ahead and do this. So one thing to note is with the speeds, it's going to affect this. So if you want to change the speed later, you're going to have to change this delay later as well. So let's say it also needs to be able to repeat, so we need to click repeat. And as you can see, it's adding them way too fast. So let's go ahead and turn the delay up to something like 20. It will probably be too much. Too little, I guess. I'm going to go into wireframe mode just by clicking Z, and now we'll be able to see it a lot better. So as you can see, it's adding it way too fast. So let's go ahead and say 25. Alright, no, let's try 40. This is kind of just a testing around game. And one thing to note, what you can go ahead and do is if this doesn't suit you as well, you can just scale this down a little bit. Apply scale. And press play. Alright. So let's go ahead and scale this back down a little bit. Apply scale. Kind of until we get to the movement we like. So I think that's good. It could be fixed a little bit more so you don't get that overlapping, but I'm happy with it. So now you see we have our main level playing. So if we press play, you see that we're falling down it. And I do think this is pretty good for starting off. So let's go ahead and set up some more of the logic. So let's set up the random tiles. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to duplicate this. Alright, and move it across, and duplicate it and move it across. So I'm going to have 3 different tiles. So I'm going to go ahead and give them a name. So 2 and 3. So now you see that 1, 2, and 3. So let's go ahead and set this up. So first of all, the second one is going to be kind of a bit different. So I'm going to go ahead and just move the center to the cursor to center by Shift A, cursor to selection. And I'm going to go ahead and add a cube, and this is just going to kind of be a beam. So let's move that across, duplicate this maybe, and move this across, move this down, move this across. So that looks good. Let's go ahead and go to our second one, scale, add a cube, scale, rotate, move this down. So there we go, these are different variants. Now really you'd want to make sure that the player would always have to be moving so they can't stay in the same place, but this should be fine for me. So we got all the different ones named different names. So let's go ahead back to our randomizer. And in this case we actually want to make our randomizers. So what we're going to go ahead and do is add a property, and it's going to be integer. And if you didn't know, this is a way to store data. So what we want to go ahead and do is call this rand. Alright. So now we have our random set up. So let's go ahead and close all of these. And I'm going to go ahead and instead of having an edit object here, we're going to have a random actuator. So add actuator random. So I'm going to go ahead and connect this up. And one thing to note is the seed, if you have this at 0, what's going to happen is it's going to be random every time. But if we change this to something like, not words, letters, 34, it's going to be same every single time the random number. So if you want a random number, you have to leave it at 0. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is go ahead and change this from this value here, from what it is, Boolean constraint, to an integer ununiform. So once we've done that, you'll see it's changed a little bit. We've got these two properties down here instead of the other one before, and we're going to go ahead and select the property to assign the leftover random value to. So that's going to be the property there. So to make sure this is working, we're going to go ahead and click this print debug property for this info. So if we click that, it's not going to do anything right now. There's one last thing we need to do, and it's go show debug properties in the game panel right here. So if we click that and we press P, as you can see it in the corner. It says empty, and it's got that random, but I just kind of shortened it so I make it easier. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and make sure this actually has a value to show. So I'm going to go from 1 to 3. So the reason I'm going from 1 to 3 instead of from 0 to 3 is 0 is counted as a number, and I mean, you could have it from 0 to 2, but in my opinion, I don't know, it just kind of makes it feel a lot easier to work with 1 to 3 instead of from 0 to 2. If you're trying to have 3 things. I personally like doing this way. You can do it like this if you like. It's up to you. But anyway, what we're going to go ahead and do, now that we've done that, is if we press play, it's going to pick a random number every time it was supposed to add a thing before. Now this is great, but how is this useful? Well, what we can go ahead and do is we can say add a sensor, and this is going to be a property, and for every single tile we're going to need to do this. And by the way, the amount of randomness you want to have here is dependent on your tile. So if you had one more tile than me, you'd have it 4. Depending on how many tiles you have, you want to add bigger values, It's pretty easy to understand. The more tiles you have, the more numbers you have here. And what you're going to go ahead and do is for every number, you're going to say if the property random or rand is equal to 1, then it's going to output. If it's equal to 2, it's going to output. If it's equal to 3, it is going to output. Alright, so these are all going to output to different things. So we're going to add an edit object and a edit, not 2D filter, edit object. And now we're going to go ahead and select our second layer. So they'll show up, and I'm just going to use this eyedropper tool. So it's a lot faster. So let's go ahead and select these. Alright, so now that is done, what we can go ahead and do is come back here and connect all of these up. So now what you see is if we close these, I'm actually going to leave this open because we need to do something in just a second, but if we press play, you're going to go ahead and add one. It's going to add random ones. And what you see here is we have these random gaps that show up. So what are these gaps? Why are they happening, and how can we fix them? Well, the way we need to fix them is, I believe it's an updating problem. So the way we can fix them is we can just say if property is equal to 1 and delay is active, which it will be, because this is running. Alright, so one mistake I made before is with this. So what I've done here is I've said OR, and we plugged all of these in. And the problem with doing OR is it's just going to run all of these at the same time. So also, the way I've plugged it in, I didn't realize this before, but I've plugged into each of these. So if it's, or this one works, or this one, so it's always going to be doing weird stuff. So what we want to go ahead and do is actually disconnect these and add a actuator. And then we're going to go ahead and add in this actuator setting, we're going to select this random. So when this is active, it's going to, we also want to change all of these from OR to AND. So when this is active, it's going to do it. But the problem with that is we get a little bit of a problem. So the way we can do that is how updates just doesn't work as correctly as we'd like. So the way you can do this is go invert. And what you should see now is now we won't have that problem. We'll have it adding correctly. Now you see we do have that little problem with the things showing up, but we can just easily fix that by scaling stuff up. But there we go. That's how you fix that little problem that I made a mistake with in this first tutorial. Right. Now you can see the player's more or less avoiding the obstacles if I'm skilled enough. So let's go ahead and add some life to this player. So what we can go ahead and do is grab the player and let's give it a property, and this is going to be an integer. Now integer is just a whole number, so it can be like this. If you want ones with little dots and stuff, you can have float, and it's going to give you all the stuff with dot 71 minus 1000.70, whatever. Anyway, we're going to go ahead and change this to integer, and this is going to be set to life. Now what you see here is if I go ahead and give this 3 and give this a print debug info for this property, and we press play, you can see it's showing up and nothing's happening. Well, obviously because we have no logic set up to say what are we going to do this. So we want to go ahead and take away from this property if life is equal to 0. Sorry, if we collide with something, it will take away life. So if life is, if we collide with an object, and you'll see here we have this property value. So if we collide with an object with a certain property, such as this one, if we were to collide with another player, which we don't have 2 player, but if, let's say you hit another player in here and we were to collide with it, we could put life in here and we could detect the collision because this has a life property on here, and we could also just have another property here and say if it collides with property. So what we're going to go ahead and do is add on a property to all of these. So this is going to be a whatever type you want. I like Boolean myself when I'm doing this. So the type doesn't matter, it's just the name here, but I like Boolean myself. So I'm going to go ahead and set the property to name hit, maybe. Right, so I'm going to call it hit for lack of a better name. And I'm going to go ahead and select the player, and if we collide with a object with a property hit, and I believe we need to add it to all these other objects. Yes, we didn't do it, so copy paste, copy paste. So it needs to be the same. You know, big capitals. If you have big capitals, and the same lowercase and uppercase you have in all of them. Right. So this needs to make sure this is the same and all the same. And what we can go ahead and do is we can say add a property actuator, and we can go ahead and close this, and we can go add, and we can go property. Now one thing to note is you won't see a subtract one here. All we have to do is go -1. So you could just go 1 here and it's going to add, but if you want to go and get rid of 1, -1 will work. So now what you see here is we can fall, and when we hit the object we die. Now, one thing to note is if we want this to kind of work a little bit less like just running all the time, if we hit tab, when this first happens, it's going to trigger it, and then it's not going to output anything until it happens again. So let's collide this, collide, and you see we're colliding and we're losing all the life. So let's go ahead and close these. So we can go ahead and close these, and we're going to go ahead and add a collision. Sorry, not another collision. We're going to add a property, and if the property is equal to life, life is equal to 0. What we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go ahead and end the game. So let's go ahead and we can say scene, and we can set the scene if we like, or we can just go ahead and go game, quit game. Now, in my case, I think we will go ahead and do set scene. Alright, set scene, and we're going to go ahead and connect this up. So I'm going to go ahead and set the scene to a new scene. So we just click new scene here, this little tick, plus, and this is going to be called die. And I'm just going to leave that blank for now, and we're going to go set scene to die, and we're going to go back to camera view, and let's play our game. Alright, Alright, so there we go. It's set the scene. As you can see, it switches to the next scene. Alright, so let's go ahead and do one of the last things in most of the basic mechanics, and that is to go ahead and add I believe, coins, sorry. So the way we can do that is we can add another coin on this layer, so a coin on this layer, and I'm just going to use a basic cylinder. You can actually make a coin like I did in my game. In this case, I'm just going to use a cylinder, and I'm just going to go ahead and extrude this. Excellent. I can go ahead and delete that, and we can add a cylinder. Yeah, what is this called? I forget. It doesn't matter. Anyway, we're going to add one of these. I can't remember the name of it now. Anyway, let's go ahead and move this. So, sorry, I didn't mean to go that fast. We want to select the edges, so come over here and we go to edge, and we want to go ahead and hold down Control and right click on the edges. So there we go. Now we're going to go ahead and select W, bevel, and the way I select that second edge was with holding shift, by the way. So we can go ahead and click W, bevel, and kind of bevel this down until it looks like a coin. It's not really important, but it does make it look nicer. So I'm going to go and smooth. So there's our coin. You can go ahead and give it a color if you like. Let's go golden color. So there is our golden color. Nice gold. Right, so there's our golden color. I'm going to go apply scale and apply rotation, and I'm going to go ahead and add the name. So this is going to be coin. Alright, so what we're going to go ahead and do now is we're going to go ahead and add our always, and we're going to go and add a motion, and we're going to go ahead and connect this up, and we're going to make this not local, so it's always rotating in the same direction. And we're going to go ahead and rotate on the Z by 1 degree every tick. As you can see, now it's spinning around, you know, kind of like a coin. Now, also, we want to go up by 0.8, I believe is the same speed as our thing. Wait, so what speed was this? 0.6, I believe, actually, if I just look at this. Yep, 0.6. So, actually, I kind of want it to look like it's falling. So, let's go a bit slower. So, let's go 0.5. I believe that will make it look like it's falling. 0.42. Just kind of so it looks like it's falling, but it's not. Let's go 0.5. So it looks like it's slowly falling. Alright, so we can go ahead and set this all up, so this will be set up. So the way we can go ahead and make these coins appear is we want to go ahead and go into top view and add another empty. And this is going to be just a normal empty. And we're going to go ahead and move this down to about here. So this is where I'm going to have my coins start from. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm going to add a random sensor, and I'm going to go ahead and leave it set at 0, so it's random, and I'm going to go ahead and change to true level triggering, and I'm going to change this skip to about 20. So every 20 ticks it's going to kind of update and give us a random output. So this is the only way you can really use this random thing, and it will work for what you want. So there we go. This should work pretty fine. Now we can go ahead and go edit object and connect this up. I want to select our coin from this, and as you can see now, what you should see is that the coin is added and it's kind of falling, I believe. It should be working. There we go. So you might want to change these beams up. They're really annoying. But anyway, I believe I'm colliding with the edge of this as well. So got to be careful. Alright, so we'll fix a bit of this later, but you see as the coins are working. So let's go ahead and make this a bit more random. So what we can go ahead and do is we can go ahead and go to the top, and we can go into camera view, and actually we want to come over here to animation, and we want to go into camera view once again, and we're going to click, go ahead and grab this, make sure this is selected, and hover over it and click I location, move maybe 20 frames, move it over here, I location, move it 40 frames, I location, and we have some random movement here, and maybe just once more over here, I location, and we can go ahead and scroll in here, and we're going to go ahead and hold Alt, right click, and you see this is here, and then we can go ahead and duplicate this. So duplicate, sorry about that sound, that was just my timer for the video, but I'm going to keep going. So now all you see is I just went Alt D and moved it across. So now you see it moves around. It's for what we want. So it comes in the same place. So now what this is going to do is it's going to be going along, and when the thing is added, it's going to be adding in kind of a almost random position, but kind of a less random position, which is nice. So I'm going to go ahead and just go hover over here and click E on the last frame, just so when we press play it's going to look nice. It's not necessary, but I like it. So let's go ahead and go first frame, so shift and then right arrow key, a left arrow key I believe actually. I'm going to go back to game logic, and we can go ahead and add always, and we can go ahead and add an action, connect this up, and we're just going to select this action here. It's got a garbage name, but who cares. So I believe if we come back here, we've got 80 frames. So in the frame slot, we can select 80. So if we press play, you'll see that now the coins are being added in random positions. I hope. Is it working? Oh, so one thing to note is you've got to go ahead and say loop end. So it's going to be looping. So that should work now. So you want it to be looping, so just change it to loop end. There. Alright, so this is working, but the objects, these are a bit too small for what we want. So I'm going to go ahead and go scale this up on the X and the Y. So S, and then kind of S, and then Shift Z, I believe. So everything but the Z axis. We can kind of scale this up, and then we can go ahead and go apply scale. So now what you should see is, yeah, that gives us a bit more lenience with what we're going to want to do. And we also want to go ahead and kind of make these beams less annoying. And scale this down, and we can go ahead and get this beam and kind of get them in good positions where we don't want to make it too hard. Let's go back, and we can go ahead and press play. Now you see it's working a bit better. The beams are not necessarily in the best place, but they do work. Alright, so one thing to note that I definitely forgot about is we want to be able to collect these coins. So first of all, I'm going to have them delete. So we're going to go add a property. This is going to be a boolean. It doesn't matter what type, but as I said before, I like boolean. Just kind of shows me that it's a property that's going to be testing for stuff. So I can say property player. Now you can just use this normal property. It's just the name. So you could actually just have if it has the property life, I prefer just to have a custom property for it in my case. So if you want to change the name or something. Anyway, what we want to go ahead and do is we want to go ahead and come to our coin. Now we have a property on a thing called player, and if we collide, so add a collision sensor, if we collide with it, we want to go ahead and end object. So edit object, add an edit object, and we're going to switch from add object to end object. And if we collide with player, it's going to send an output from this to this edit object, and it's going to end object. So what you see here is we should be able to collect this up. As you can see, it does look like we are collecting it up. So maybe you wouldn't want this to be so wide because they're quite far away. It does really depend on what you want. But as you can see, we are collecting the coins up now. Sort of. Anyway, so now we want to go ahead and do a little bit so that we can get coins get money for the coins we collected. So let's go ahead and add a property to this, and this is going to be a boolean, and what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to call this a property on here, and this is going to be coin. And let's copy that. And let's get our player, and if we collide with a property called coin, we are going to add to the coin property, which we're going to add. So integer coins, I'm going to call it coins, and this is going to be coins. We're going to add to coins 1. So now what you'll see here is we should enable this so we can see it drawing up. Is we're going to go ahead and collect one, which I keep missing there. Come on. So there we go. We got a coin, and we got a coin, and we got a coin, and we got a coin. So come on, it's not working. Come on, let me collect a coin. All right. So I don't believe this is working because we have a sign. So we need to change it to add, because the sign is just going to add. It's going to assign the value, not add. So now let's try it. Oh yeah. So we're collecting the coins now that we want. So that's all great. One thing I want to add though, is when we collide with this object, when we're losing life, I kind of want the camera to shake, because I really think it gives it a nice effect. It's not just like you're going through it, it's like you know you hit something. So the way we can do that is we can come over to animation, and we can go ahead and change this from action editor, from dot sheet to action editor, and let's select our camera, and we can go eye rotation. And now you can see that's the same there. So let's go over to keyframe 30. And we can go eye rotation. So the start and the end are the same. So let's go ahead to 10 and rotate this. So we can double tap R and kind of just like move it around and free rotate almost. I'm going to move it up here. And I'm going to come back over here, and I'm going to go ahead and rotate this out this direction. So it kind of gets this effect of getting really moved around. So I'm going to come to 30 and I'm going to click E so I can see if it loops well. So this isn't the best. Maybe double tap R. Kind of less of a showing up. So here we go. Let's go ahead and rotate this. And let's rotate this. And let's try this. Alright. So here we go. Now that's not the best animation, but it should be fine for this tutorial. This is going back to game logic to the first frame. So everything's fine. Let's go ahead and say if we get a message hit, we're going to go ahead and play an animation. So it's going to play all the way through. So we're going to leave it on play. And this is going to be camera action. It's going to be for 30 frames because that's what we had it to. Now, this message thing, if you don't know how this works, we can send a message, or basically if we activate a certain actuator, it's going to send a message out to the scene, and this is going to detect that, and it's going to run whatever we have connected to this. So for now, it's not going to do anything. So let's select our player and add a message. And so message, and connect this up to the collision. So here, this is the collision one, as you can see. Collision is this one. We can go message and we can go hit. And now you should see when we hit something. Yeah, so that's a bit slow. So let's go ahead and come back to animation. The first frame, select the camera, and what we can go ahead and do is if we were on the first frame, we could just scale down. So I'm just going to scale down to 10 frames. So now we can go ahead and check this. Yeah, that's what I was more going for, to tell you the truth. So now I can go ahead and change this to 10 frames as well. So now you should say, yeah, now you can really tell that we've hit something. So let's go ahead and collide with all of that. So that looks pretty good. Are we getting the coins? So there we go. That is the end of today's tutorial. Most of the stuff we went over is the base mechanics of the game. As you can see, we could do with fixing up the side of those things, just making them a tiny bit taller. But in the next tutorial, next week, I'm going to be going over the kind of the graphics side and having some things in the top corner that show our score, our life, and so on. And also I'm going to go over how we can have, bake the ambient occlusion and create, that kind of art style I had in the game, which is really nice, and also maybe add some mist so we don't get this adding of stuff. So there we go. That's the first tutorial on how to make a kind of infinite falling game. It's just the basic mechanics for now, but in the future we're going to be going into more advanced stuff. So stay tuned, and I will see you in the next tutorial coming up soon.